Well, good morning, guys. I'm sure we can have a better morning than that. Good morning. So first of all, I want to congratulate each and every one of you for being here. I think it's awesome. It's a Saturday morning, and you've chosen to be where most people don't. And before I thank Regenesys and welcome up the speakers, maybe I'll start off with a story. There was a story of this wise old man. And he had a whole lot of people around him, a whole lot of students in that, and people who want to learn from him. And the minute he told a joke, and everybody laughed. 5 minutes later, he told the same joke, and only half the people laughed. And 5 minutes after that, he told the same joke, and nobody laughed. And one person said, "But why do you keep telling the same joke?" He says, "Because people keep complaining about the same thing. And most people want a better life, but they're not prepared to pay the price that you are today to be in an environment like this." So I think give yourselves a round of applause. So just to go through the program, be really short, sharp, to the point. We want to thank Regenesys so much for putting this on. In conjunction, what you'll notice is a partnership with HWH. There's 4 of the speakers there from the program. You'll get to know them as we go through the program. But today's about you. Today's about you taking in what you need for yourself as entrepreneurs, or where would you like to go. We're going to have some showcases, some people on the program at the end, talking about the actual platform, and then afterwards there'll be some showcases and Q&As. But a little bit of housekeeping. If everybody knows, if you go out the door, turn to the right, the toilets are there. So if you need toilets, please could I ask you just to put your cell phones to silent so that you don't interrupt either the speaker or even the guests in the room. So we're going to kick off straight away. We're going to try and keep as close as possible to the timekeeping that's allotted. And we're going to start off with the Head of Community Development, Dr. Barry van der Westhuizen. Now, I think Regenesys is unbelievable putting this on together for people who are hungry to learn more. So I think in appreciation to Regenesys, let's give Barry a real big warm welcome.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a momentous occasion for Regenesys Business School over here today. I thought about writing a speech, and I didn't, because I'm talking to young, sharp, erudite minds with big dreams ahead. So Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream." Ladies and gentlemen, we all have a dream. You have a dream, and the future of our economy lies within you. It's way past the day of having the old guard trying to create jobs for us and make our country work. Every young entrepreneur here today and out in the communities lays the groundwork for the future of our society. So you've got tremendous speakers ahead. I'm not going to take time. The Regenesys community engagement policy and rollout has got to do with us taking our academic knowledge, our work, rolling it into communities, working with communities, so that we teach you what you need. And believe it or not, all our academics, all our staff learn a lot more from the communities that we're dealing with than we can out of books. So it's very important that we become part of your community, enable you to become a better entrepreneur. Just from the Regenesys side, we are starting an entrepreneurial series of courses in conjunction with great speakers like we've got here. We're going to launch an entrepreneurial clinic where startups can come to us, get advice, get guidance, and we're going to get involved. So if you haven't registered, please register. You're going to be on our newsletters. You're going to be on our websites, like it or not. And we are here to talk to you. By the same token, speak to us, please, and speak to the tremendous speakers we've got over here. We're here to help you make a future. And the payback for us is not seeing us up in lights. It's to read about you making a success, seeing you being a success, being the next black like me, for instance. Okay, that's what we want. Right, I'm not going to take much more of your time. Let's hand over to the speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barry. Short, sharp, to the point. Now we're going to get on to the actual speakers, maybe some learning, maybe some tips to take in. And I think that's important because everybody you're going to hear from today has done it. And I think that's what's crucial. You know, a lot of times I go to a lot of places and people haven't actually done. And when they stand and talk, they're talking from theory. But here you're going to get theory and practice. And that's what I think is really, really important. So without any further ado, the first speaker I'm going to introduce is Julian. Julian is an owner of Moringa and Impossible to Inevitable in Africa. He's a qualified human resources professional, industrial psychology. He's an entrepreneur, speaker, performance expert, and has coached on boards, executive, seniors, and middle management levels across a variety of industries. As part of his unique behavioral and high-performance coaching methodology, Julian has worked with international sporting teams, Olympic athletes, golfers, tennis players, cricketers, and amongst others, I know personally he's sold into professional boxers. He's an incredible person. He's not recently come back from Saudi Arabia where he was making a difference. So I think without any further ado, let's give Julian a big round of applause, and thank you so much.
Good morning, Sawubona. Thanks, Mart, and thanks to the business school for having us here today. It's an absolute privilege, and it's great to get going. You know, as part of that introduction, I'm always sort of reminded, no matter how many sportsmen, women, professional athletes, executives I've worked with across the world, and it's not only South Africa, it's this sort of event that really sort of gets the minds and the hearts and the blood flowing. It's working with youngsters, young entrepreneurs, early startups, etc., that really builds that space. So I often get asked, how do we build high-performance mindsets? And we're going to talk to some of the other speakers that are going to speak today will specifically focus on high-performance mindsets. How do we build successful mindsets? How do we build entrepreneurial mindsets? Now, in professional sport, we talk about incremental steps to success, marginal gains. What does that mean? Every day, I'm better than I was the day before. We don't have to make massive changes in our worlds and in our lives on a daily basis. We need to get better every day. Do something today that will ensure that you're better tomorrow than you were today, and likewise. So I've worked with, and we're not going to be throwing bottles up here, I've worked with some of the PSL teams. Orlando Pirates was my most recent gig. Take it easy, ladies and gents. With Coach Michu and Coach Rolani, we did quite a lot of work in that space. But today I'm going to talk a little bit about my own entrepreneurial journey and where I believe it started. Rewind back to 1986. I'm 6 years old. I was very much into gangs and putting little things together in groups of friends. And we were in a nursery school back then. Decided that when one of the boys had 20 cents, and believe it or not, 20 cents was decent, we could put together 2 rand. Right across the road from us was a Pick and Pay. Now I'd got my gang together, and during the break, we managed to get through the fence, across the road to the Pick and Pay, and we were going to get ourselves some knickknacks. Interestingly, we didn't have enough. Our 6-year-old math didn't quite work out on the playground. So what I realized was there were old ladies that were pushing their trolleys out the Pick and Pay. And I walked up to one of the ladies and said, "Can I push your trolley?" Pushed her trolley to the car, and when that was done, I said to her, "Do you have something for me, perhaps?" And she gave me a 20 cents, added it to the total, pulled my team together and said, "Guys, I've got a plan here." I still joke today, I think I was maybe one of the first people who started that trolley pushing sort of movement. That afternoon, I won't mention how much trouble we got into when we eventually got back to the nursery school, but we not only had knickknacks for all 5 of us, a Coke and a chocolate. I had R4.50 in my pocket. And I realized that by understanding people and understanding people's needs, as an entrepreneur, that's probably one of the top sort of areas of speciality for me. Fast forward, by the age of 16, I was running 3 jobs. I was waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning. My dad would help me most of the time, I think to his disdain, but I would roll up newspapers. I had the Star newspaper be delivered outside my door. I'd roll up the newspapers, put them in a massive bag, get on my bicycle and deliver the Star and Citizen newspapers. By varsity, I was running another 3 different jobs. I was selling cell phone cards, recharge vouchers. Back in the day, that's how, before the sort of evolution of cell phones and the way we sort of acquire data today. Back then it was cell phone cards and recharge vouchers, and I'd come across an opportunity in the mining industry where they were handing out to their foremen, their senior leaders, middle management. They would hand out these cards on a monthly basis, and I met up with a guy who worked for Vodacom, and I was able to get these at a reduced rate as a distributor. So I was distributing cell phone recharge vouchers to the mines. I was at University of Pretoria doing my degree, so there were a couple of schools, Pretoria Boys High, Whips, etc., in the area. So I started a coaching business, and I'd coach youngsters from cricket to football to you name it, and a couple of other businesses at the time. Started my own sort of journey at that stage, but as you go through this journey, and as I got my degree, I then sort of in the back of my mind, I grew up in a rather conservative home. And that conservative home said, well, when you get your degree, the natural progression is you go and find a job. And when you find the job, you work there for 30, 40 years, you're loyal to the organization, you retire, and I suppose then you die. Sort of sounded like not a great plan to me, but you know, it was a start. So I went and found a job, started in a consulting firm. I'd studied, as Martin mentioned, industrial psychology and human resources. I did a BCom and an honors, and as I was studying, I was doing my master, or working, I was doing my masters as well. But found this job and sort of worked my way through this consultancy business. Then I decided I needed to be in corporates. You know, that's what you want to do. You want to be in corporate South Africa. So I found a job in the bank, the Blue Bank. Won't mention any names. I very quickly realized that probably wasn't for me. However, and I always share this with entrepreneurs, it was a learning that I could never undo. If you get an opportunity to find yourself in corporate sometime or working with corporates, be a sponge. Take as much information as you possibly can in every step of your life, in every aspect with anybody you ever interact with. Consume. Take as much information. Learn. What I did learn was that the bank wasn't for me. However, for 3 years within the bank, I managed to get onto a management accelerated program, which would have cost me personally fortunes. So there was a massive win. I understand now, looking back 20 years ago, why it was so critical to understand corporate governance, why it was so important to understand processes, policies, procedures, understand systems. Because when I run 5 businesses today, if I didn't know any of that, I probably would be back where I was. So take as much as you can every step of the way when you're on this entrepreneurial journey. Learn as much as you possibly can. I then came out of the bank, went back into consultancy, another 3 years, and then again decided I needed to be on the other side. Found myself in an engineering firm, construction. It was pre-2010 World Cup, so the closest I could get at that stage to being hands-on involved was to be part of the construction companies who were building the roads, the structures, and the stadiums. Mbombela Stadium, the stadium, Peter Makaba Stadium, and we were part of a couple of other stadiums as well. So, you know, again, in that space, I spent the sort of 5 years of my career in that space, growing into a corporate HR role, which again, I was good at, but I wasn't loving it. I wasn't passionate about it. You know, when you're sitting on a Sunday night, and at that stage, I've got a little daughter, and I'm writing exco reports for a company I'm not passionate about, I started asking myself these questions. Where, what, how, what does the future hold? How am I going to go back into this entrepreneurial journey? And at the time, my wife, she's a business owner, she's not an entrepreneur, and she'll be very, very comfortable with me telling you that. She runs a travel business, and at the time she'd gone to a conference in Mauritius. She'd come back and said, there's this guy, Mike Finnegan, and I told him about you, and he has his business card. And I said, well, who's Mike Finnegan? And I remember putting his card in the bottom of my drawer. And 2 weeks later, she was still on this high, and she was pumping, and she was thinking differently, and she was speaking differently. And I took that card back out, and I phoned Mike Finnegan, and we got stuck into some conversations. And I made a call there that I was going to get on a plane and fly to the UK, introduce myself to this team. And Mike Finnegan ran a high-performance sports psychology business. His clients at the time were Manchester United and Everton Football Club. Subsequently, we work with Burnley in the Premier League as well. I flew across at that stage, and you guys will get this in your entrepreneurial journey. There's a lot of naysayers. A lot of people who will say to you, don't do it. Why are you doing it? Why are you thinking about doing this? Why are you stepping out of that comfort zone? I always say the magic happens just outside our comfort zone. It doesn't happen here. You guys have taken the first step. You're here this morning. You're sitting here where most of your colleagues or many of your colleagues might still be curled up in bed or hustling the streets. Whatever their reason is, you guys have chosen to take the first step. So in the same manner, I took the first step, flew across. My worst case scenario at the time was I've wasted the amount for a flight and a week's worth of accommodation. I also remember coming back. I was the group HR head for this organization, TWP, Wally Parsons and Basil Reed at the time. And I remember we were going through a retrenchment process. I was retrenching just on about 1,000 across engineers, planners, geologists, etc., because it was post-World Cup and jobs had run out in that industry. And I remember walking into the CEO's office and saying, I'll do these final round of retrenchments, but the last person I ever retrench will be myself. And I put my hand up for a voluntary retrenchment, settled with Mike Finnegan and his team, brought back a lot of the methodology and started my own practice. And to talk mindsets, and I know some of our speakers are going to speak mindsets, I'd prepared for 6 months to leave corporate. What it was going to look like, how I was going to tell my mom. I mean, gee, I'm an adult. But that was the one thing that I kept thinking. How do I tell my parents? How do I break this news really to my friends and family, etc., etc.? And I prepared mentally to leave corporate, but I never prepared for the first day out of corporate. I remember saying, well, my resignation, I'm going to leave, my mindset is set, I've made my decision. I even booked a round of golf, because that's what entrepreneurs clearly do. You book a round of golf. Because the first day, money's going to come in and people are going to come to you, so you play golf, because you've got time. And I woke up that first day, I'll never forget, 1st of August, 2016. I woke up and I went into a flat panic. I got into my emails. There was not a single email. Nobody needed me. Nobody valued me. I probably couldn't have, if I didn't wake up that morning, I thought to myself, shucks, is anyone going to miss me? I was so busy in a corporate life of what I thought was adding value, solving people's problems, being busy, writing reports, etc., that all of a sudden it became very lonely. And I had to cancel that round of golf, by the way. I don't think I played a round of golf in 2 years, the first 2 years of my sort of real entrepreneurial journey. But I cancelled the golf and had to start building a new mindset. I needed to build a mindset of, what do entrepreneurs look like? What are the sorts of connections I need to make as an entrepreneur? And for the next year, all I did was conversation after conversation, sell after sell after sell. So much so that I became that guy that people didn't want to hang around with. Because if I'm at a braai or a get-together or the local hotspot, I'm telling you what I can do for you. And people are like, take it easy, man. Take it easy. Take it easy. We can feel your energy is not right here. Okay? And that was sort of, again, one of those awakenings. Well, what do I do? How do I go about this? And I always talk about that one moment. As entrepreneurs, we can get very flustered. We can get very busy with a lot of stuff. I found myself spending most of my time in coffee shops trying to, speak, and everybody's got an idea for an entrepreneur, and you should be involved in this, and have you thought about that? And 6 months go by, and you realize you haven't made a cent. And you realize you've been focusing on so many different aspects that they're not making you any money. So at the time, I was sitting at Monte Casino and having a conversation exactly like this with the potential client. We were in one of those restaurants, and it was late afternoon, late evening. It was about 8 o'clock, 8:15. And we were about to wrap up, and I remember saying to the person, well, this is pretty much my pitch. And there was a table just sort of within a meter or so of us, 2 ladies sitting at the table, and I remember them having a glass of wine, and the one saying, let's have one more drink. And she said, no, that's me. I've got to be at work at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning. Sorry, I'm not in a luxury position as you are. And as she got up, she walked past our table, and I said, 4 o'clock in the morning? What on earth are you doing at work 4 o'clock in the morning? And she said, well, I'm the executive producer of SABC Newsroom, Channel 404 on DSTV. And I said, I know you're on your way. Do you have 5 minutes? I just want to quickly, and again, I was in pitch mode. I'm like, well, I want to tell you what I can. And she says to me, well, I overheard your conversation, and I'd like 5 minutes, if you don't mind, when you've wrapped up. So we spent some time together. 9 o'clock that night, she says to me, look, I've really got to go, but I'm going to drop you an email in the morning. And it was one of those that I thought, I'll never hear from this lady again. The next morning, switched on my computer. She'd introduced me to Kendall Makamate and Eben Janssen. That Friday, I was Jules, the sports guy. On Friday morning, newsroom, it became a regular stand-in where we spoke sports psychology after the sports report. We spoke Serena Williams, we spoke Proteas cricket, we spoke Bafana going into the African Nations Cup, etc., etc. And that really sort of created a profile for me. So that was that's the one business that runs really well. I lost the Orlando Pirates contract and the Super Rugby contract as COVID hit. Lost a lot of speaking gigs. But interestingly, in 2018, a friend of mine and myself, we were doing a NPO project for a large American NPO in a small village called Lupisi. I don't know if any of you are from Mpumalanga. Lupisi, just outside of Nelspruit. It was a gig that nobody really wanted. They talk about the leaky bucket syndrome, lots of money coming into a community on a monthly basis, but at the end of the month, there's still no money in the community. And it comes in via grants, and it comes in via all kinds of avenues, black tax, etc., etc. But at the end of the month, there's no money in this community. So we went in there, we were walking the streets. We looked like two complete Joburgers when you walk the streets of a little local township and you've arrived in your suit and it's 40 degrees in Nelspruit weather. That's also not ideal. But here you are walking these streets, and we're meeting, Mama Tandi, and we're meeting Gogo Elizabeth, and everybody's telling us about their stories and how they're trying to create some sort of income in this community. And we come across this tree called, and Martin mentioned it, called the moringa tree. And one of the ladies says, oh, and here's our medicine cabinet. So I said, oh, medicine cabinet, what are you talking about? I'm looking in this felt, and I'm like, where's the community center? What are you talking about? I don't understand. She says, no, here's this tree, the moringa tree. They refer to it as the miracle tree around the world. I said, I'd never heard about it, but okay. And they started telling us about the multiple benefits and how it's used in traditional medicines, etc., etc. Driving home that afternoon, I'm straight on my phone. Llewellyn's driving, I'm on my phone. The moringa tree, what is this all about? I realized that it's a $15 billion industry worldwide. 80% of the world's moringa comes from India. The world's starting to look for other sources of moringa. I say to Llewellyn, this is an opportunity. We can do this. And at the time, interestingly enough, I wasn't thinking of a business. I was thinking of an NGO project that could feed the nation. I was thinking of an opportunity that meets a need for people, for youngsters who go to school with one meal for the day. Some of them one meal, and we'll all know, one meal maybe in a couple of days. So very quickly, we decided, let's see if we can make this work. We rented a piece of land, paid a lady 2,000 Rand for a small piece of land about this size, just outside of Nelspruit. We bought some seedlings. I remember the guy laughing at us when I said, I want to start a business and I want 50 seedlings. And he's like, what? So eventually we bought 5,000. Then we bought 50,000. Now we've got a farm of 1 million moringa trees just outside of Nelspruit. We're the fastest growing, biggest moringa business in the Southern Hemisphere. We're exporting to Australia. We're exporting to the UK, to America. We're in Discom nationwide. We're in Namibia. We're in Pick and Pay Africa. That's 4 years, 4.5 years, including COVID. COVID really accelerated that business because people started looking for healthy alternatives, immune boosting. Not only at the time, and I always laugh, and I'm quite embarrassed with how I went about this, but I walked into Medicare pharmacies in the December, and I said to them, do you guys sell moringa? Because I was now doing my research. I've been reading up on moringa, walk into a pharmacy, do you sell moringa? And they said, we don't anymore because we've lost the supplier who used to supply moringa. So I said, oh, well, do you know what? I've got a moringa business. They said, you do? Wonderful. Can you be on shelf next week? What products do you have? And I was like, well, I've only ever seen it in powder and in teas and some capsules. So I said, well, those are the 3 we've got. She said, great. Here's a purchase order for 3,000 Rand. Can you put your products on our shelf? I didn't have a brand, and I didn't have moringa. I had some trees growing in Mpumalanga, but I didn't have moringa. So very quickly, and when I look back, and it's in my little cabinet, our original brand, and how we put that together on a PowerPoint presentation and stuck a label on and put teas on the shelf of Medicare pharmacies. It was just crazy. Subsequently, we've managed to raise capital. We've got investors. We've partnered with Dr. David Sekete and Simon Murule. We've got the Fed Group who've invested in our business. So it's a sort of, I'm trying to just explain to you and paint the picture that it's about a roller coaster ride, ladies and gents. But you've got to be open to opportunities. You've got to understand the needs of people. You've got to understand the needs of a community, because that's really where the magic happens, is when you can understand, when you can really unpack and understand what the needs are of people and how you can fulfill that. I'm not saying my journey is the same as yours. I play to my strengths. I understand how I can network people, how I can bring people together. Someone else, and if I go back to the age of 6, what I actually was doing was I was getting people around me, bringing kids around me who were better at me than most of the things that I could do. It's about partnering with the right people who can fill your skills and fill your skill set. Because you can't do everything. If I didn't have Llewellyn in my business, if I didn't have Lebo in my business, if I didn't have Audrey in my business, I wouldn't be able to do any of the things that I could do. Because they are so much better at the governance side. They're so much better at operations than I am. It's about linking yourself with the right people. So just quickly to wrap up from my side, some learnings, some common mistakes that I see people make, and some of the mistakes I made as well. Don't get stuck in debt too early. At the age of 43, I've still never bought a brand new car. And I have no intention of ever buying a new car. I'd much rather invest in properties. I'd much rather invest in shares, in small businesses like yourselves. There's no need for me to have a fancy brand new car. I mean, I've got 2 kids. They don't think I'm cool regardless of what I do. That really doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what I do. The second thing is, let me take this with me. We're not purposeful or careful with our time. We need to be purposeful. We need to live with intent. We need to be able to communicate. Barry mentioned earlier, we've all heard that great speech from Martin Luther King, I have a goal. Yeah? Has anybody ever said, I'm going on the holidays of my goal? I've just met the woman of my goals. I'm buying the house of my smart goals. No. We talk about our dreams because great communicators around the world have learned the power of words, pictures, and emotions when we deal with people. When we deal with entrepreneurship, it's about words, pictures. Can I paint the picture of what I can do for you, what my business can do for you? What need am I fulfilling in the community? What need am I fulfilling in my immediate ecosystem and environment? We must focus on one thing. You know, it sounds hell of glamorous now, 20 years later, but we have to focus, and I always talk about that one thing. What's the next thing that moves my business to the next level? What's the next thing? You guys chose this morning. My next thing is to get up, pitch up, arrive with the right attitude and the right mindset, because then I'm unstoppable. Looks like my time's just about up. Take risks, be bold, and most of all on this journey, ladies and gents, you've got to have fun. You've got to have fun. You've got to do stuff that you're passionate about, because if you do stuff that you're passionate about, if your business is in line with what your values and your vision and your passion is, and I used to think I'll never travel again after corporate. Within 6 weeks, I was in Singapore. I'd spoken in Wall Street. I was sitting in the change room with Manchester United stars, with David Moyes trying to work out what his next move was. I've worked with Orlando Pirates. I've worked with Blue Bulls. I've worked with Lions Rugby, SA Cricket. But this is the stuff that really, really ignites the passion. Lastly, what I've learned, never give up. Some of you would have driver's licenses here. Imagine the time when you went for your license. How many times would you have had to fail?
3 times.
How many times would you have had to fail before you gave up?
No, I wasn't going to give up.
I wasn't going to give up. That would be the common answer. It doesn't matter if I failed 10 times. The failure wasn't the option there. Because it wasn't the card I was after. It wasn't my license card or license disc. It was what it symbolized. Freedom. The ability to move. The ability to take that girl or boy on a date. The ability to find your own job. To be out in the world. And it's the start of your adult journey. Finally, ladies and gents, as entrepreneurs, you will fail. You'll fail and you'll fail and you'll fail. Man, when I was in corporate, I used to sort of belittle failure. But once I understood how important failure was, we fail as entrepreneurs, we fail, and then one day we stop failing, which is also amazing. Doesn't mean you don't make mistakes, but you stop failing at the silly things you did earlier, which was part of your learning. It's so crucial to be part of the learning. And finally, opportunities like this, take them. Every step along the way is a learning opportunity. No matter whether you're interacting with Melanie Miller at one night in Monte Casino, or you're meeting David Moyes and speaking to his team about having the right mindset, take your opportunities, put yourself out there, and then the world's your oyster. Thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you, Gillian. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. So, the next speaker I know very, very well. Well, exceptionally well. But before I introduce her, you know, we've been very blessed. We've spoken around the world to hundreds of thousands. I think over 600,000 or 700,000 people live. And normally when they introduced us on stage, if we speak together, they always say, and welcome on stage the Beauty and the Beast. I am so sick and tired of them calling Tracy a beast. You just cannot believe it. But Tracy's up next. Tracy is a mother, she's a wife, she's a granny, she's a friend, she's a life coach, she's an entrepreneur. She's one of the, and I don't want to say it because it's my wife, but I have never met anybody who can connect and communicate with people the way she can. And I think that's one of the best skills you can create as an entrepreneur. How do you connect? How do you care about people? How do you put people first? And you'll have whatever you want. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Tracy Hutchins.
Wow, it's great to be here. I really wish some of you guys at the back would come forward, though. It makes it so much easier if you're not so